Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are breaking down week 19 of fantasy hockey. We are going to be breaking down the schedule in terms of which teams have the best, which teams have the worst, and also be giving you guys the best streamers to add for this week to help you win your matchup. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. For the week 19 best schedules, we have 8 teams on this list. These are ranked by off nights and also opponent strength. Off nights coming first, and then if it's tied in off nights, we go to the opponent strength next. At number 1, we have the Winnipeg Jets with 4 games this week and all of them being off nights. Really solid schedule for maximizing your games. And then at number 2, we have the New York Islanders, who also have 4 games and all off nights, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. These are the only 2 teams that have more than 3 off nights this week, so very valuable. You definitely want to add players from these 2 teams. But moving forward on this list, the rest of the teams have 4 games and 2 off nights, which is still super solid. We have the Minnesota Wild, the Calgary Flames, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Philadelphia Flyers, the New York Rangers, and finally the Los Angeles Kings. These are ranked by opponent strength, like I said, but I think all of them are good options for the players that you want to stream this week. Moving on to the worst schedules, we have 4 teams that only have 2 games this week, which is not ideal. Ranked by opponent strength, we have the number 1 worst schedule this week being the Colorado Avalanche, who play on Friday and Saturday, only 2 games and 1 off night. Then we have the Dallas Stars, the Arizona Coyotes, and the Florida Panthers. So if you have a bunch of players on these teams, you got to cross your fingers and hope you get lucky because your opponent will probably have more games than you this week. But also, if you are looking to add players for the entire week to stream, don't add players from these teams. Even if you're looking to add a guy for long term, it might not be worth it and it could cost you your week. Moving on to the easiest schedules, which is ranked by opponent strength. We have 5 teams on this list. The number 1 easiest schedule being the Nashville Predators. With 3 games, they have a .414 opponent record, which is super solid. Expect them to get a couple of wins this week. Then we have the Panthers, the Hurricanes, the Oilers, and the Wild. These are very good options, and these teams are likely going to get a decent amount of wins this week, which could mean a lot of fantasy points for your players on these teams or potential players that you want to stream. On to the hardest schedules, we have the number 1 hardest schedule being the Ottawa Senators, having a .666 opponent record. They play Boston and Carolina 2 out of their 3 games, so probably not a lot of wins for the Sens. You definitely don't want to have players on this team or stream players from this team either. Then we have the Kraken, Red Wings, Canucks, and Los Angeles Kings, all with an above .600 opponent record. It is going to be tough for these teams to get some wins or potentially score a lot of goals, so keep that in mind when you're streaming players from these teams. Moving on to the highest opponent goals against average, these teams right here are playing against teams that let in a lot of goals, so streaming players from them could be very beneficial and give you a lot of fantasy points. The number 1 team having the highest opponent goals against average is the Florida Panthers. They only play 2 games, but the teams they play have an average 3.63 goals against, so that is going to be super solid. Then we have the Predators, the Canes, the Lightning, the Bruins, the Capitals, and the Minnesota Wild, all having high opponent goals against average. If you have a lot of players on these teams, expect a lot of fantasy points for this week, and definitely consider streaming players from these teams as well. They could potentially put up a lot of points for you. Then we have the lowest opponent goals against average, and these teams are playing teams that do not let in a lot of goals, which could mean a lack of fantasy points for you if you have players on these teams, or if you're thinking of picking up players from these teams as well. We have the number 1 team being the Kings. They do score a lot of goals, so this might not matter, but they do have the lowest opponent goals against average, so be wary of how many fantasy points those players might give you. Then we have the Jets, the Senators, the Kraken, the Red Wings, the Avalanche, and the Canucks, all having low opponent goals against average. We will see what happens, but definitely not the best options to stream. Moving on to the best streamers that you should add for this week, we have some amazing players on this list. Starting with Brock Nelson, one of the most underrated players in the NHL. Then we have Matthew Barzal, Blake Wheeler, Anders Lee, and Kyle Palmieri. These are the top 5 players you want to add because they do have 4 games, all of them being off nights. Not only do they put up a lot of fantasy points, but they are going to help you a lot in terms of maximizing your schedule. I really like them for this week. Then we have Joel Eriksson-Ek, Matt Boldy, Rickard Rakell, Dylan Dubé, Vincent Trocheck, Travis Konechny, and Philip Hedl. All these players have 4 games and 2 off nights. I think they are solid options, will likely put up a decent amount of fantasy points, so I prefer adding them if those other guys above are not available. Part 2 of the best streamers, we have Mikhail Backlund of the Flames, who's been playing really good as of late. Philip Deneau, he just had 3 assists the other night. Victor Arvidsson, Kevin Hayes, Cole Perfetti, even though he's been super cold, he has 4 games and 4 off nights, so that could be good for maximizing your schedule. Then we have Andrew Mangiapane, Blake Coleman, Brian Rust, Alexis Lafreniere, who has been super good. I think he's finally breaking out with that line of Hedel, Lafreniere, and Kakko. Also Kakko, like I just said, Ryan Hartman, and finally Quinton Byfield, who is on the first line on the Kings right now. Young player, puts up a lot of hits too, so in a deeper league, I think Byfield could be a super solid add. For the best goalie streamers, we have 2 really solid goalies on this list. Number 1 being Philip Gustafsson. They have 4 games and 2 off nights. They do have a back-to-back, so Gustafsson is getting at least 2 starts. He's been getting a lot of starts lately. It used to be a Fleury-Gustafsson split, but I think in the last 5 or 6 games, he's gone 90% of the starts, so he could be an amazing long-term add if you're looking to add a goalie. His roster percentage is definitely lower than it should be, and it's only going to rise, so definitely take a look at him on the market. Then at number 2, we have Phoenix Copley of the Los Angeles Kings, who is also an amazing long-term add. He has a record of 17-3-1 on a Kings team that is looking like legit Stanley Cup contenders. If you don't want to add him for long-term, you can just add him for this week if he is available. They have 4 games and a back-to-back Thursday and Friday, so Copley is very likely getting 3 starts, which could mean a lot of fantasy points for your team. Finally, we have the best back-to-back / one-night goalie streams. Number 1 being Antti Ranta of the Carolina Hurricanes. They have a back-to-back, and Saturday they play the Ducks, so Ranta is very likely getting that game. Carolina is one of the best teams, Anaheim is one of the worst teams. This makes a lot of sense. Then at number 2, we have Dan Vladar of the Calgary Flames. They have a back-to-back, and he's likely getting that game against the Coyotes. But he has played better than Markstrom, so you never know. They could give that game to Markstrom. Then we have Philip Gustafsson. They have a back-to-back Thursday and Friday. Thursday against Columbus and Friday against the Leafs. I think either way he's going to put up a lot of points, but ideally you want him to play in that Columbus game. Then we have Brian Elliott, Saturday against the Red Wings, Sogard and Mandalise. On Saturday, they play the Canadiens, and either one of these goalies is going to get that game, unless Talbot is somehow healthy, but I don't know when that guy's ever going to be healthy. Then we also have Allen and Montembeault for the Montreal Canadiens. They have a back-to-back for Friday's game, and they are playing the Flyers, so either one of these teams could get the win, but Montembeault and Allen, they tend to make a lot of saves, which means a lot of fantasy points, so like that. Then we have Casey DeSmith, who's probably playing Saturday against the Blues. The Blues have not looked good lately. We have Charlie Lindgren. They played the Sabres on Sunday, and even though the Washington Capitals have been struggling a little bit, hopefully Ovi is back by then, and they can get a W there. Then lastly, we have Urson or Sandstrom of the Flyers. I don't know which one's getting the start, but on Friday, they play the Canadiens. Like I said, Montembeault or Allen are probably the better option here, but Flyers can still win some games, so could be a good option, could be a low-scoring game. I like it for a one-night stream. That's it for the video, guys. Good luck on your Week 19 matchup. Make sure you hit that like button below and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And like always, have a good one.